All right, welcome back to the channel. So further to the last episode, I told you I was going to get the engine and the transmission into the car, into the ute. Before I do that, I've got to do a couple of things that are just going to get in the way if I have an engine in there. So one of these things, once again, this is probably obviously inexperience from my behalf, not having done this before. The bundy tube, I've noticed that some of the fittings on the brake lines are a bit worn out. So I've gone in and got, I think they're 1/4 inch tube and bundy tube and the fittings. I've got a few fittings. I'm waiting for a flare kit to come so that I can just flare the ends out of the brake lines where it goes to the master cylinder and also to the brake hoses on each caliper. And so it's just easier to do that before the engine goes in. I've also spoke to Paul Rogers and got some bolts for the housing of the transmission to the engine, and they I got high tensile, and I probably didn't need to, but I thought I'd just do it anyway. They are 3/8 and 1 1/4 inch length, so got 6 of those. That's what you need to bolt that on, so that will covers that. I've got these window wipers that I touched on a while ago. Now you would have all had problems with these if you've got an old ute. Yeah, everyone that's bought one of these utes would have a problem with the windows if they're original and still in original condition. What happens, these slider bearings wear out, the grease dries up, they grip, and then they eventually become brittle and break. These two, there's 1, 2, 3 on each window mechanism. These two are passable. This one is probably not, so I was going to replace it. They sell bearing kits for it, and what it is, it's a plastic sleeve that you see there. I'll do a close up, and there's a metal rivet inside with a hollow end. Basically, you put it through the mech, you put it through the hole, knock out the old one, grind it off, put it through the hole, and then you put it in the vise and just get a chisel and hit with a hammer and just chisel across on the end of that hollow rivet. And that flares it out and creates tension on the mechanism, and it'll hold that in place. So that's why you'll see that cross on the originals. So that's how that's done. But these are 28 bucks for 2, and the whole mechanism is 50 bucks for 1. So if you had to replace all these bearings, you're better off just buying a whole new unit. I didn't realise that at the time. So I'll go ahead with just replacing those, and if they do stuff up, I'll just get new ones of these. So they're pretty reasonably priced considering what's involved. I've also got these for the door rubbers. These are the little black sleeves that you'll see on the holes on the outside perimeter of the door. They need to be plugged in there first before you seat in the white clip on the rubber. Now this is probably why a lot of people would say that those door seals aren't very good in rare spares. Maybe they didn't replace these because that obviously narrows the gap for that white sleeve to then seat inside the door. Without these, you're not going to get a good seat with your rubber, and it'll just be floating around. Now, in hindsight, I probably didn't need to get these, but I thought I would because the rubber was a bit bloated and perished in the old engine mounts. So I've got some new engine mounts. Now, if you're going to order the engine mounts, they actually, there's not just this, there's another unit that sits on top of this, and then you bolt it from there, because these are fixed nuts and these are fixed bolts in that rubber, and you can't actually put them directly to the engine. They sit on the chassis, and then the sleeve goes over the top. So I didn't realise that at the time. I just got this base, but I went upstairs and had a look, and the sleeves are fine. I'll just recondition them, put them on these, and then off I go. I also bought a new Turbo 350 engine mount, transmission mount for the cross member. So you'll need one of those as well if you're going to be restoring it. Best to replace all those because over time they've all got rubber, and over time that rubber obviously becomes brittle and inefficient. So yeah, might as well replace them. They're not that expensive. So everyone knows about the infamous WB lights. This is the shape that differed from the previous models, which was round, and this is what makes the WB in my eyes. Everything else is identical in the H series other than these lights and the grills. So it was a real step away from the old school style of the headlight, and a lot of people don't like these square headlights. It's very much a love-hate relationship with these lights. I personally, when I first looked at the WB, I wasn't a big fan of these lights, and I suppose over time, when I was going to the B&S balls and we're looking at Kingswoods and things like that, the pinnacle ute of a B&S ball was a WB Kingswood, specifically an 84 model. And I fell in love with the WB after that. And once I was hooked on the WB, I then started to like the lights, and I love that square light now. I think it's original, it's different, and as a result, they're bloody expensive. So you can't buy these lenses anymore. Well, in fact, you can. You can buy the glass, found it online, can put it up here, but I think they're $170 per glass, and they're out of stock. So I never contacted the person or the business that was making these, reproducing these, but I thought before I get to that point, I'll try and restore these. Now, whoever's got these lights will know that the lenses tend to get sandblasted over time, being glass, and obviously, you know, near 50 years old. Yeah, they get sandblasted, and over time they get dirty inside. So these lenses, plastic lenses on the sides, they're reproduced, so you can get them. NOS one's about $250. You can get a set from Kingswood Country for $99. They're exactly the same. But before I go and order those, I just thought, well, let's take it apart. Let's have a look how dirty it is behind that. Is that just dirt making that a bit dull, or is that because of the plastic's faded? I remember for the first roadworthy, I got one of these lenses here. So inside the WB manual, there's got a full breakdown of this light and how to take it apart, what's involved in it, and how to reassemble it. So for those who haven't taken them out, they're all a plastic body, and they're held together with this, it's a steel frame here, it's been chromed, or it's aluminium. And the glass is held on with these metal clips there, you can see. It's there, and that pinches the frame of the glass on the front. So you've got to take these screws off and carefully take those clips off. Now I've heard that when you put those clips back on, they can actually crack the sides of the glass, so you've got to be very careful. You can see this light is actually in pretty good nick. It does have some sandblasting on the front, but most of it's probably just grime in the back. So I reckon with a good clean, that could come out pretty good. The other one does have a couple of little chips on it. I'm going to use a different method. I'm going to clean this inside, see how it looks, but I'm going to polish this light, and I'm going to do it in a couple of ways. The first way, you can use cerium oxide, which is a glass powder it's an abrasive that will slowly, surely get that off with some grit. Usually it's a polishing stage at the end. Now, before you get to that stage, you'll be there for hours trying to get rid of deeper scratches, so you're better off using an abrasive first. Now you can use sandpaper, or you can use diamond disc, which I'm going to use, and I'm just for concreting and polishing. So I'm just going to use a really, really fine grade diamond, probably about 1,000 grit, and just very so lightly give this a polish and see if I can remove the deeper kind of scratches, and then I can get onto the finer grit and then the cerium oxide polish at the end. I might give this a practice first on something else, just in case, because you don't want to ruin it. And we'll just see how we go, and yeah, hopefully we can restore these back to almost new condition again. Because to buy these again, if you can get a set, I think they're around about $500 or $600 each light now. So big investment. All right, anyway, let's get this polisher out and have a go. Alright, so moving on to the light now, and I'm going to give it a go. You can't really see it, and I may regret this, but it's all about trying these things so other people can have a go as well. So it is sandblasted, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to start with 200. I've got the hose hooked up so the water is constantly fed out of there. It's got a safety switch on that polisher in case the water, and I'm just going to basically run it with 200 400, 800, 1500, 3000, and then give it a polish. And we'll see if we can remove some of those stone chips and bring it back to its former glory. So here we go, the make or break here. So that's the first pass at 200, and yeah, it's got a nice even matte finish now, but you can still see that the major or the bigger stone chips are still there, but the finer stuff is definitely going. So it just depends on how far I want to take it, you know. They're pretty deep, so I don't know if I want to eat in that much, but I might keep going a bit more, get some of this finer stuff off. There's a couple of chips there. It's actually a low there from factory. It's quite low, so I'm not going to worry too much about that. That'll polish out. So the risk is that, you know, I won't get this back to the way it was, as shiny as it was. We'll give it a go. So I'll give it another pass to 200, then I'll go to 400, 800 and so on. All right, so I cut out most of that, but I did the 200, 400, 800, 1500, 3000, and then got some cut and polish on top of that with the cut and polish buffing pad, and you can see it's come up really good. I couldn't get those big pits there, but that fine sandblasting layer has been basically polished out. And so you could probably get some cerium oxide, I haven't got any, and just take it to the next level, get it really mirror. But if I compare that to what it was before, basically that's like a new lens. So I'm really happy with that. It's just taking off that dirty sandblast layer. And the risk, it was worth the risk. I've managed to polish it up, probably 90% I reckon from what it was from factory. And that is fine to put back onto the ute. So if you have a look how clean that is, and then have a look at that, that's what the other one is. So it's definitely done the job. I'll call that a success. So if you want to bring your lights back at home without buying a new set, then bust out the old diamond water polishing and finish it off with the cut and polish, and you'll get the job done. All right, so now I'm going to restore the indicator bracket or housing. So yeah, you can see the paint's flaked off, and I have to repair that. So I didn't have time. I'm just going to get some of this gloss white, give it a scuff up. I've taken and saved the gasket there, and yeah, I've got the new clips for in here as well. Those things, and the new lens. So I'll paint that, put the new clips in, and put the light bulbs back in, and reassemble, and she's done. While I'm waiting for that to dry, I've just popped off the chromed reflector inside. You've got to be really careful with this. I started to polish it. Do not use any kind of chemical or petrol on it, because that's only a very thin layer of chrome and it will come off. I just was using water, and I could start to see it rubbing through to the copper underlayer or whatever they do. See there, it's like a little bit brown. So really I could probably get that chromed again, but at this point I'm just going to leave it. It's not noticeable, but I've cleaned it up enough for now. Don't make a big difference if you've got them re-chromed, I reckon. Inside here is basically still brand new in here, except for these plastics have worn out there and there. That one's actually snapped. And so they're your light adjusters, basically. They position this and then vary the light beam. So Rare Spares actually do make replacements of these, which is good. So 2 each light, and they come in a kit of 4. And so I'm going to replace them now, and I'll just do one at a time so I can mark where they're actually positioned. So the light should be the same when it goes back in. So yeah, I've got the reflectors, obviously the light casing, the glass is done. This is the dust cover that goes over the back of this main light. So I'll probably just give that a little bit of a clean with that rubber solution that comes in that Rare Spares kit. That's the gasket from that reflector housing that I've saved, and then they're the light bulbs in there. So yeah, so basically restored the lens. I haven't restored the chrome, but I've restored these 2 clips here, and I will get and add the new lens cover onto the indicator housing as well. So that's sort of like a 80% restoration, I would say. You could take it further if you wanted to. I don't think there's any need to replace this dust boot, but if yours is really perished, you could replace that. That's fine, and I'll just clean that up. But yeah, you could probably take it next level and get that re-chromed, and also get these re-chromed as well, which a lot of people would do. I'm trying to save some money at this point on this build, so I'm just going to leave them like that. And that's something I can always do down the track. I'm going to do the exact same method on this light, but I didn't want to mix any parts up, so I'm just going to do this whole assembly first and then put it back together, and I'll show you the before and after, basically, the old one and the new one, and you'll see the bit of the difference. And yeah, whether it's worth it or not is up to you guys, but I think it will be. Yeah, and I think even though it's a bit of effort to take it apart, you know, at least you know how it all goes together, how it works. And if it's anything like mine and it hasn't been changed before, these will definitely be perished, and this will definitely be sandblasted. So it's worth having a look at. All right, so I'm going to put these clips on now, finish painting the cover, and then we'll do assembly. All right, one down. All right, final step is to attach the glass clips back onto the glass. Got to be careful with these, apparently, putting them back on, because if you push too hard, you can chip the side of that glass lens. So you've got to be real careful when you do that. This one is so far not chipped. The other one actually has some chips from a previous install, whether that was from factory or not too sure. I've painted the inside of that now. So that's all gloss white. Put the gasket back on. I managed to save that, so that'll be fine. And then I've got the new indicator lenses as well from Rare Spares. So I'll put them back on. I've got the new glass. It's all sealed in there. So I'll just put the clips back on, put the screws back onto there, and put it back in the frame, and it's done. so there they are. You can see the restored one on the left and the other one unrestored on the right. And you can notice it's just got that nice, clear, shiny lens look. And that one's just got a murky, kind of sandy looking, dust blasted look on it. You know, from a distance you wouldn't notice, but yeah, once you've painted the car and you put these things on it, it would definitely stand out if you had a dirty old light lens on it. So you can see there, it's just that nice crystal, extra bit of clarity by polishing it, getting that sandblast off it, and getting inside there and just polishing up that chrome reflector as well, and just adding that final touch by spraying the reflector housing white again and getting a new lens, so you're not getting that discolored orange and that sort of yellowing clear as well. And then, yeah, the chrome just gave it a bit of a metal polish on the chrome surround. And that's it. You know, these lights in that condition would go for about $600. Unrestored, probably a little bit less, but not much. So it's definitely worth saving, getting your tools out, investing in one or hiring it if you can, and trying to restore these lenses. They really lend themselves to being cut and polished because they're flat. You know, that if you had a round lens, it'd be very, very hard to get the same result. But WBs are quite unique in the fact that they've got a large flat surface, which is perfect to getting the wet polisher out, the diamond grits, and work your way up 200, 400, 800, 1500, 3000. Finish it off with a felt cloth and some cerium oxide if you've got it, and you'll have a almost new lens without spending the money on trying to find one. So there you go, that's how I restored the WB lights. All right, so back into the shed, and since I was getting into those lights, the old man came up and we actually embarked on putting the engine in. As I mentioned last episode, the engine and the transmission were going to get bolted together and put in the ute, but it didn't end up happening, and I'll tell you why. All right, so here's the transmission. Got the cooler lines, or the cooling lines here, and you've got the original transmission cooling lines there, but they've been cut off from the radiator. So the stock WB Statesman that came with this radiator, that came with this transmission and engine combo that was put into this ute, had these these hard lines here that were just like basically push-ons, and they go through on those hard lines to the actual main radiator, which has an inbuilt cooler on it. And you know, that was working fine, but I suppose with the higher stall converter, you want a separate cooling system. So I've had to order some -6 fittings that are going to replace these little nipples, and I'll have the full braided line, 200 series I think it is, braided line all the way through to a B&M cooler, which will be mounted inside the radiator support, and then that will have some heat shield under those braided lines. It'll be flexible, much better upgraded system than having those old hard lines there that are actually smaller in diameter as well. So, and I don't have to then clean them up and do all that kind of thing. So once again, not having done that before, learning the hard way. So that was that. Obviously you got the engine in front of the ute here. So the only problem with leaving this ute around for so long is it does get very dusty. So unfortunately she's looking a bit dusty, but also looking nice. So once it's all outside and all together, you know, I'll give it a final polish, because she's still a bit rough on this side, still a bit flat in areas and things like that. So I'm not really too concerned at this point in time about that. But the main issue, other than the transmission, was that all the bolts, flex plate bolts, the engine mounting bolts, extractor bolts, every single bolt I gave and put in a packet and sent it when the engine was getting built, and unfortunately they never returned. So I've had to go and resource all those, not finding them in the returned stuff that I got. The flex plate, obviously if you ever fitted a flex plate before, when you first initially put it on, you don't think it fits. You've got to keep spinning it because it's they're slightly off and they only line up in a certain orientation. So I'm missing those bolts. It's just a couple of other things. I noticed that I'm going to have to get some new ones of these because that's all right, that one, but the other one has actually broken that little pressed fitting there. So that's actually useless. I'll have to just get 2 new ones of that. And the rest of the brake lines are fine. So I went and got myself a double flaring tool, a little pipe bender, some Bundy tube, and just some various fittings so I can repair those lines, probably going up from those brake lines to the brake booster and the master cylinder there. I think that line's a bit shit, so I might replace that. Yeah, just been referring to the manual, which is really handy. It shows you where those original lines that I showed before go, and they sort of go around the, so they go from the transmission, sort of work their way over the top of the transmission, underneath the transmission and then around like that. But I'm gonna disregard that because I'll be using the braided line. So off camera, I've been doing a fair bit, just little jobs, and this is one of them. I reconditioned the window winders. So they've come up really good. These are really well made. There's no point, in my opinion, to buy the whole set. So you might as well just buy, if they were cheaper, it'd probably make a bit more sense. But they're actually quite expensive, these little grommets. These little bearings are quite expensive. 2 of them cost $29. So yeah, that's the only unfortunate thing. It really should be a lot cheaper than that, and it would make it a lot easier to save. But anyway, so basically you just hammer them through. They've got a little hollow thing. It's not pretty, and probably not as good as the original there, but it does the job. It's hanging in there, and that will make sure that those windows continue being functional. Those are the originals from stock, and they're hanging in there even though there's a little crack there. I'll put that on the passenger side because that'll be hardly used. All right, so now I'm just going to finally get back into these extractors and prep them. I was going to use a little bung and just put a little bung in here, screw bung, to fill these probe holes that were drilled during the dyno, but I'm just going to weld them up and get them ready. I'm going to get into that now. Back over to something a bit different. I'm going to wet sand a door and then I'm going to finish off those lights. Okay, just picked up these when they got delivered. These are the tailgate limiters, pretty old school. One thing I don't like about them is they're just raw cable, so I did find out what the best way to get around that. They don't sell them with this already on it, so bet is to just get some heat shrink tubing and slide it on, then shrink it up, and that will make sure your paint doesn't get roughed up by that cable. All right, so a bit more of an update on other things I've been doing. So I did say that I was going to put the engine in, but I was missing all those bolts. I've been waiting forever to get the bolts. So I've got the flex plate bolts. I've got torque converter bolts.
I've also got starter motor bolts. I was missing that short one, which is a pain in the ass. So I got the long one, but I decided just to get some more. All this stuff adds up. And I'm still waiting on the engine mount bolts and the transmission bolts. And I've been waiting 2 weeks. So I did mention that I was going to bypass those transmission cooler lines and bypass the original radiator cooling system, which is in this standard radiator, and go a separate cooler. So I've got some braided tube. I've got the speed flow connectors. B&M supercooler is the radiator that I'm going to be using for the transmission, and that will bolt basically in front of the existing radiator. I need to order some twin thermofans as well, which aren't that expensive, and they'll bolt onto the original radiator. And then that system will go plumb straight from the transmission and just feed up past the extractors and in front of the radiator, and I'll make a little strap mounting kit that will bolt onto that radiator support. And then that will be that done. And I can maybe play around with just fixing some of those existing brake lines before I do that. So I've also redone the actual starter motor as well, which you'll see there, reconditioned that and painted it. And the old man started on the loom. So we've started to recondition the whole loom, taking the wiring apart, cleaning it, wrapping up new electrical tape and trying to save that, because it is a good loom, and you might as well use it if it's in good nick, and it is. Can you just do another couple of clicks just for the camera? All right, cool.
I think that's about
right. My elite set of spanners.
What's that, 17?
All right, and I've got to do that 3 more times. We've got to take these off too.
Oh yeah, and they've got to go in there.
Yeah, so that one connect, they're both the same on this side. On the other end, one's a 90 degree because it's got to turn on the bottom of the cooler.
That's right.
-6 to 1/4 trans adapter ×2. For those who haven't used these before, they're a much better alternative to the old original, but they are pretty expensive. They come in around between $40 and $60 depending on which one you get. And then the braiding line, the braiding line, which is really hard to cut, can fray out. Well, you can use various techniques. We're using the old Stanley knife technique. So inside this, they call that little olive. It's a tapered piece of stainless steel or aluminium, and once you've flared out the braid, so you push that in to open up the tube again. Like that. Is that a bit shit? All right, doesn't look like much at the moment, but it's all prepped and ready to go in. Got transmission lines done. Spilled a bit of oil because the sump on the transmission was actually undone.
and Dad's getting Mike in front of the camera. And they've put this dipstick in, which was, if you ever do it, you've got to take this grommet off first, put that in, and then push the dipstick in. We haven't put the vacuum line in because it's going to be too hard and it's blocked, so we're going to leave that. Gear selector we'll put on later as well. Found out that's a vent breather tube. The starter motor's in. We're not putting the dust cover on because it didn't fit, so we're going to leave it for now. Always put that on later. And so yeah, it's obviously hanging on a fair angle, and we've got to get it in there, so we're just going to take our time and see how we go. So we had a few little issues on the way in. The bolts on the engine mounts wouldn't line up, and we realised the old man had put them around the wrong way, so it's the old man's fault, that one, but I forgave him. And yeah, so that wasn't a big issue. We just turned them around and then it sat in nicely. The transmission, it's those two bolts there, and the rubber mount, slightly tilted forward to get them in. So I just basically just undid the actual mounts on the bottom of the transmission and loosened off the rubber, and that allowed it to tilt forward. Then I put those bolts in and then tightened them all up. Didn't want to go too hard on the casting bolts. You see the sumps lined up. You got the lines there, braided lines coming from the front of the transmission, which still need to be plumbed into the front once the radiator goes in. You've got the modulator, air modulator thing there. I still have to plumb that in. And on the other side, the speedo cable actually attaches there as well. And yeah, you can see there the dust cover wouldn't fit on. So I've left that off for now. It's no big deal, but I'll have to order another one. It didn't fit the holes in the bell housing, so I think whoever had that original dust cover just bolted it on the side, because I don't think it was ever bolted on the bottom. So that's that done. Did a test fit of the extractors before. Unfortunately, marked the cover here, so I might even take them off at the end, give it a spray. Yeah, test fit the extractors, which fit in, but the clearance on that, and I did mention this to Luke when I ordered them, he said it was going to be all right, so I'm hoping we can still use it, but it's pretty tight in the cross member of that transmission cross member. But because the pacemakers have got a 3-inch kind of flange here, it's going to be pretty tight. So anyway, we'll just have to run with it for now. And then we started putting on the radiator support. So we've got that on. And then we just started putting some of the little pulleys on there as well, and started cleaning up the power steering unit and the brackets. You know, they're ugly, unfortunately, and they've got to go on the front of the engine, which is a bit of a shame. But yeah, I don't have electric power steering and all that kind of stuff. It's just old school. So I've just got to tidy her up and put it on. And I know that power steering works a treat because I was using it before I decided to restore the whole ute. Other than that, we didn't have any major issues of, you know, hitting anything or dropping the thing or anything like that. So yeah, all in all, really happy to have made that that engine come in, and now it's really, well, as far as I'm concerned, it's easy. You know, it's just little bolt-on things and slowly tick away at it. The steering column, I'm going to order a new one. Well, I'm going to get a second-hand one that doesn't have the column shift on it, just one that's meant for actual floor on the floor, or T-bar autos. It doesn't have that thing on the actual steering column, so I've got to get one of them. But really, the thing that's holding up at the moment is the extractors. I wasn't going to get them ceramic coated, but I've decided that it's just, yeah, I've got to rein in the spending. So I'm just going to get some high temperature paint. A lot of you might go, oh, just ceramic coat them, but yeah, it's unfortunately really not viable at the moment. So I'm going to just get some KBS high temperature paint or thereabouts and paint them myself and be done with it. And then I can progress the build. I can, you know, start to put all the other stuff on that needs to go on, like the inner guards, and yeah, and then I can hang the doors, hang the guards, buy the carpet, put the seats in, and then really just start to put the dash in, the clusters, the gauge clusters, and we're there. We're almost there. So I reckon this thing is definitely going to be finished in the next couple of months, I reckon. And I'm really excited to drive it out of here when it's a day after rain, so I don't get any dust, because that would be the worst thing.
All right, so that's it. I'll do the outro again, because before, yeah, it was a false alarm. I managed to get the engine in. So I promised that the next episode I would do that, and it is in. And so now, yeah, it's just a matter of, I can't wait to get some new wheels. They're going to have to wait. But now it's just a matter of money, money, money. Just get some money, buy some more stuff, keep building her up. And for those out there that are doing the same thing, you know what it's like. It's like life, money gets in the way. Just chip away at it while you can. Unfortunately, I've made it a stage show, put it on YouTube, but that's why it takes so long. It's probably why it's almost been 2 months since the last episode. A couple of things on the side that I'm doing. I know that I mentioned 3D printing. I've got the 3D printer now. So I'm going to start to work on those tail light housings. See if we can get a couple of those moulded up and printed in ABS. And I've also got a Kingswood badge that I've got an aluminium casting of, and I'm working on reproducing a few of those. So that's just the first one. It's a bit rough, but it's showing promise. So it'd be really cool to get a few Kingswood ones made out of aluminium instead of plastic. Stick them on the side of the ute. So stay tuned for that. Thanks for being patient. If you've just tuned in, this has been going for 5 years, so there's like 76 episodes. If you want to go to episode 1, follow the journey through, you'll see the pain, blood, sweat and tears to get to this point here, and it's been enjoyable at the same time. So apparently the first WB meetup up in Echuca was on last weekend. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it, but it looked sensational. So I'm definitely going to go next year, and I'll be bringing this rig with me, and I can't wait to meet everyone up there and see their utes as well. So yeah, look forward to that. So if you haven't, follow me on Barnsley's Builds on Instagram. I'm always updating stuff there, and I'll hopefully see you sooner than 2 months in the next episode. All right, catch you then.